All right, here we go. So in the wake of the Trump shooting, Jake Tapper went on CNN and he basically did this monologue where he's like, look, we're cooked, bro. The U.S. is donezo. I mean, we are the political violence here, the powder keg that it is. It got really ugly really fast, and he kind of walks through examples of it. So let's dive in.
Hearing from politicians this morning that political violence has no place in America. Would that were true. We are living in an era of political violence.
By the way, I should also point out, whenever they say that, what are U.S. politicians referring to? They're referring to domestic politics. So you're like, within the confines of our own borders, we shouldn't have political violence. Yeah, we should have 32,000 gun deaths a year, a lot of suicides, a lot of mass shootings, a lot of school shootings. All that we're kind of comfortable with. We've made our peace with that. But political violence, no, we're against political violence within our own borders and only there. Because the reality is what? We fund death and destruction all around the world. I mean, that's just a fact. That is just a fact. And particularly right now, where Biden is arming and funding Netanyahu as he does a genocide in Gaza. And we've killed over 180,000 Palestinian civilians, or according to The Lancet, there's 186,000 dead Palestinians. They don't say what percentage is and isn't civilian. But according to Euromed Monitor, the human rights group, they have it at about 47,000 dead Palestinians, and about 90% of them are innocent civilians. So this is what we're working with, right? Giving them 500-pound bombs, 2,000-pound bombs. I like when he cut the 2,000-pound bombs off for like 2 weeks and patted himself on the back like, I'm very humanitarian. Like, don't spare me the sanctimonious lectures about we don't believe in political violence. Of course you fucking do. Of course you do. Maybe you believe in it more from a foreign policy perspective, but that counts. Palestinians are human beings, right? Jesus Christ.
Last night, as you all know, horrifically, a shooter opened fire and tried to assassinate former President Donald Trump at a campaign rally. This was the closest call in terms of a major assassination attempt on a U.S. leader on that level in more than 40 years, since Ronald Reagan in 1981. We do not yet know the specific motivations behind this would-be assassin, sick and twisted though they assuredly are. But sadly, this is not the first time we've seen this kind of repugnant and un-American violence. In 2011, then Democratic Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot in the head and nearly killed by a gunman at a constituent event. Other innocent people were killed. A 2017 shooting at a Republican's congressional baseball practice left Congressman Steve Scalise in critical condition. Then, of course, there was the Unite the Right white supremacist rally in Charlottesville that year. In 2020, violence exploded in protests after George Floyd's horrific murder. Then, on January 6, 2021, an attack on the U.S. Capitol and that aftermath, which left multiple Trump supporters and Capitol police officers dead. An individual who left pipe bombs outside the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee buildings. That individual's still not been identified. In 2022, former Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, was attacked with a hammer in his own home by an intruder searching for the former speaker. Another man with a gun, a knife, and a zip ties was arrested outside the home of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, to say nothing of lesser attempts. Cesar Sayoc, who sent pipe bombs to Democrats and members of the news media, including CNN, in 2018. Last year, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security warned of a high threat of violence from radicalized individuals, lone offenders, or small group attacks that occur with little warning, and said that the 2024 election cycle will be, quote, a key event for possible violence, unquote. The assessment warned of violence against, quote, government officials, voters, and elections-related personnel and infrastructure, including polling places, ballot drop-box locations, voter registration sites, campaign events, political party offices, and vote-counting sites, unquote. There is something troubling the American soul right now. Too many Americans see those with whom they disagree as the enemy, to be shunned, to be banned, to be ostracized, to be threatened with violence, or even to have that violence carried out. As with so many prior acts of violence, we right now see too many awful responses out there to this hideous attack on former President Trump, responses that are part of this trend. That includes those who, without evidence, are blaming this act of violence on those with whom they have disagreements. We are praying for former President Trump's recovery today and praying for his family and for those victims of the attack. And we urge in the strongest possible terms that this election and all our political differences must be determined by ballots and votes, not by bullets.
Again, they say that, but they're clearly not thinking about the civilians in Palestine, right? They're not thinking about that at all, and that's a fucking shame. Now, why are we so cooked? So he just lays out why we're cooked. I mean, he gives all the examples of how we're cooked. Look, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. People in this country are desperate, depressed, anxious, atomized, underpaid, and propagandized. That's what it is. They're desperate, depressed, anxious, underpaid, atomized, and propagandized. That's what they are. And that's a toxic fucking brew, bro. That's a toxic fucking brew. I mean, this is why... I mean, he brings up the high-profile examples of, like, political violence. Let's not get it twisted. There's even more totally non-political violence. 32,000 gun deaths every year. I think that number's actually gone up. I'm citing an old statistic, probably from like 2015 or 2016. I think that number's gone up. Suicides, homicides, accidents. We all know the number of mass shootings is colossal in this country. Yeah, what a great mix. Let's have people who are severely depressed and anxious, all sorts of mental health problems. Let's underpay them, have no infrastructure to support them, and arm them. Yeah, that's going to go well. That's going to go really fucking well. So how do we even begin to untangle the web here? I mean, shit. This is above my pay grade, dog. I mean, I'll say this. Even addressing any one of the things I listed, any of that would help. Any of that would help. Just subtract one off that list. Desperate, depressed, anxious, underpaid, atomized, and propagandized. Just find a way to subtract one. If we just didn't have the propaganda, for example, would that help? Yeah, it would help. It would help, for sure. If we somehow addressed everybody being underpaid, the income and wealth inequality, would that help? Absolutely, it would help. You're more likely to be a tribalist and to blame the other if you can't take care of yourself and your own, right? That's when you're more likely to become that. So scratch any one of these things off the list and we get better. But we're not on path to scratch any of these things off the list. We're just not. I mean, look, to be fair, Biden in his recent rally speech said he now added something to his list of things he says he's going to do in a second term. We're going to eliminate medical debt and buy for pennies on the dollar. Okay, well, number one, a bunch of Democratic governors have done that, and they're super mega based. Number two, you're the president. You didn't do this at any point in your first term, and now you're teasing it for a second term, and why do I think you're not going to fucking do it at all? Right? Well, I have no reason to believe they're actually going to fucking follow through on that. And why wouldn't you do it right now, even as a Hail Mary to try to get your ass back in office? So even when they like dangle a carrot in front of you, they fucking snatch it away. So this is why we're so cooked. Yes, I think propaganda is a big problem. Let's stop kidding ourselves. Like, Trump hasn't been very aggressive with his rhetoric, demonizing the other on a regular basis. I honestly think the Democrats, it's less so the case. They're very banal with the way that they campaign, and they've always sort of highlighted unity and coming together and centrism and all that sort of stuff. But you have toxic propaganda of Fox News, just relentlessly pushing the message of the Republican Party and Donald Trump. You have MSNBC, the hardcore resistance liberals brainworm crowd. So we're hyper propagandized. Like I said, income inequality, wealth inequality, massive mental problems. People don't feel like we have a community anymore. We're very separated and atomized and individualist. People are desperate, man. They're desperate. And I don't know about you. I see it getting a lot worse before it gets better. I wish that wasn't the case, but this ain't it, bro. This ain't it. The attempted assassination of Trump. Now there's going to be another attempted assassination of some Democratic politician, right? Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Or there's going to be more protests, which is fine. Protests are fine. But riots, which are not as fine, right? And then it's just, who the fuck knows? Who the fuck knows? Yeah, so this is where we are. And even CNN is seemingly acknowledging the trajectory we're on is ugly. Crystal and I talked about Mom the other day, and that was one of the things she said too. She's like, this country, bro. This country's fucking falling apart. Yeah, you're not kidding. In many ways, it actually feels like 1968, doesn't it? Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.